Parak Chof Test. We're continuing the general picture. We're talking about the 10 tests of Avram Avinu, and this parak we spoke specifically about the 8th test, which was the test of the Brit Milah, of having his bris when he was 99 years old. Now we got off on a tangent. We're talking about the Indian of Brit Milah in general. So now basically the Medrash is going to continue and speak about topics of Brit Milah and people that don't have a Brit Milah, etc. Okay, Rabbi Yochanan says, Kol machishe Hashem habayim b'Yisrael, all the people who had previously denied Hashem, that are coming into Klal Yisrael, meaning a person who's a guy who wants to become a ger, right? Nimaylim b'toivasam uvertzainam. They get their bris milah b'toivasam for their good and according to their will. Uviras Hashem hem nimaylim, and they get their bris milah. They get circumcised with Yiras Hashem. I'm not sure what that means, that they get circumcised with Yiras Hashem. But the point is that when a guy wants to become a Jew, so one of the things he needs is a bris milah and to become a ger. And then he does his bris milah, it's for his good and it's according to his will, because he wanted to become Jewish, so he gets his bris milah, that's part of joining the Jewish people, but he's doing it from his own will. V'afal pikein, even so, ein ma'aminim behem ad shuva daris. Still, you can't necessarily trust a ger until 7 generations after he converted. Shelo yoshuvu hamayim l'maitzayim, so that the waters won't return to its sources. Because the Medrash is saying that until 7 generations, maybe him or his descendants till 7 generations are going to return back to their Gentile state. So therefore the Medrash says, you can't necessarily trust them fully as you would trust a full Jew. Rashi in Parshas Yisro on the pasuk of Vayichad Yitzro brings a similar thing, where Rashi says till 10 generations, not till 7 generations. But Aval Avadim, but slaves, when you buy a slave, so you have to give him a bris milah. You give them a bris milah not for their good and not according to their will. Meaning, we hold the halacha is that you're allowed to force a slave to get his bris milah. The halacha is you have to give a bris milah to your slaves. What if he doesn't want it? Too bad for him. You're allowed to force him. And you can't trust an eved ever. Never trust him. Kach kol avadim, like we found in Parak Tazayin that Avram Avinu didn't trust Eliezer. Kach kol avadim shenimaylu am Avram Avinu leniskem uleihem v'leizarim b'Yisrael. So too we find that all the slaves that got their bris milah with Avram Avinu, so neither them nor their descendants continued to be part of Klal Yisrael. It says by Avram Avinu that he gave a bris to himself and to Yishmael and to all of his servants, all the people in his house. What happened to all the people in Avram Avinu's house? How come we never hear of them anymore?
Why is this
One second. So the answer is because they're not really part of it anymore. I mean, how do we know that he gave them a bris? It says the pasuk, they all had a bris milah. Right, so all the people of Avram Avinu's household had a bris milah, but they didn't really continue to be part of the Jewish people. Yeah, what are you asking? I'm sorry.
We see in Avram Avinu, that's the source, that they're not continuing, to keep mitzvahs and stuff. So why force them? Why Allah says to force them? We know we cannot trust an eved. Not even if he's not a little bitty eved.
It's a good question. So the Medrash. What?
What's your joke?
What?
A little bitty eved.
A little bitty eved. I didn't notice that. What's it called? What are you going to ask?
I was asking why. Why were they not become? Why were the people that converted? Where did they go?
Where did they go? They got mixed into all the other nations. They're not. They as the Medrash says, the mayim returned. The waters returned back to its source. They went back to their old lifestyles, whatever. Either them or their descendants, up to a few generations, whatever. They all went. They got mixed in again. So your question, says the Medrash, Vulama Molon. So why do you have to give them if you can't trust them and they're gonna go back anyways, an Eved, so why do you give a bris milah to an Eved? Says the Medrash, Bishvila Tyra, because of Tyra, because of purity. Shli Tamles Adeinehem b'macholeihem uv'mishtehem, so that they won't impurify their masters with their foods or their drinks. What?
The mess is inconvenient.
Yeah.
Like, more than convenient.
I think this is a huge chiddush over here because we never find anywhere that a person who doesn't have a bris milah is tamei. Where do we see that if you don't have a bris milah you're tamei? It's not. There's no tumah. The Bayis Hagadol, I believe it was.
It's interesting. See, I thought it was the opposite. If the guy is a Jew, he's not observant. So you have to be careful with the foods.
Right.
That's the whole problem because the guy's a Jew is not observant in the Torah.
Right. Because that's he could become tummy and make things tummy, but a guy is not tummy b'chal.
Yeah.
So the Bayis Hagadol he says it like this. There's a Gemara in Avodah Zarah daf nun. It says nun zayin amid beis. It's a mistake. I think it's a mistake. The Gemara says that they made a gzera that every guy is like a zav. Every guy is like a man who had seminal emissions or whatever. Right? That's the gzera that the Chazal made. So why do we give an Eved a bris milah? To make him into a partial Jew. And then he's not part of that gzera, so therefore he doesn't make your foods impure or whatever. That's what the Bayis Hagadol says. Right. Now the next line is in brackets over here because apparently it was taken out by some censors, but we have it. Shukal mi she'oichel ima eved, because anyone, you can understand why this is going to be in parentheses. Anyone who eats with a slave, ki'ilu oichel ima kelev. It's as if he eats with a dog. Ma kelev shalei nemoil kachla eved shalei nebel. Just like a dog is not circumcised, so too an eved is not circumcised. And obviously it's talking about a guy because we just said before that we do circumcise an eved. So it's talking about a guy. Anyone who touches, again, talking about a guy, anyone who touches a guy, it's as if he touches a dead body. Anyone who bathes with a guy, it's as if he's bathing with a mitzayra. Because the guy, when he's alive, it's as if he's dead, and when he's dead, he's like a carcass in the field. That's what it says in the Medrash over here. And the tefillah of a person. Okay, I don't know if it means okay, whatever. I don't know if it means necessarily a guy dafka. Could be it means anyone who doesn't have a bris milah. I'm not sure exactly. But the point is that the tefillah of such a person doesn't go in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu. About such people, the pasuk says, the dead people can't praise Hashem. So we're saying a person who doesn't have a bris milah, which I understood is talking about a guy, but maybe it's talking about a Jew also who doesn't have a bris milah. So he's considered, when he's alive, he's considered dead, and his tefillah doesn't go in front of Kadosh Baruch Hu because it says the dead people can't praise Hashem. But a Jew who does have a bris milah, their tefillahs do enter in front of Kadosh Baruch Hu. About a Jew, the pasuk says, and we bless Hashem, and from now and forever we're always going to be able to praise Hashem. So a Jew is able to.
I thought this was talking about an eved that's a goy, but it's an eved, it's not goy.
Talking about an eved? I'm not. You want to say they're talking about an eved who doesn't have a bris milah?
Maybe there's some nemuch. This is an eved. Whereas you can have a goy who keeps Shabbat, and I know you have a tzaddik.
A ben Noach.
Yeah, a ben Noach. But an eved perhaps is sort of lower.
Here, I'll tell you this much. From the Rishonim that I'm going to mention in a few seconds, it sounds like that's not the Havana. That it's talking about dafka any guy.
Okay.
The Rishonim, they ask a question like this. It says that if you bathe with this person, which I'm saying is a guy, if you bathe with a guy, it's as if you're bathing with a mitzayra. Now the Rishonim understand that means that there's an isser to go to a bathhouse with a guy. You're not allowed to take a bath with a guy. That's what the Rishonim understand. And they ask a kasha from a Mishnah Mesachos Avodah Zarah. Mishnah Avodah Zarah, Mem Dalad and Beis, I believe it is. The Mishnah Avodah Zarah says that one time Rabban Gamliel was in the bathhouse of Aphrodite, and they asked him a question like, how could you go to such a bathhouse that has Avodah Zarah, etc., etc. There was a guy named Perculus ben Plosifus. He's the one who asked Rabban Gamliel this question. And first Rabban Gamliel didn't want to answer him. He said, no, I don't answer in the bathhouse. So then when they went outside, then he answered him, etc. But the point is that from this Mishnah you see that you could go to the bath with a guy. So ask the question, it says in Pirkei Eliezer you can't. That's the question that the Rishonim are bothered by. So Gais Maimonis, it's brought down in the bottom over here in the Bayis HaGadol. Gais Maimonis in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, Perek Zayin, Halacha Yud Ches, he answers that if you go to bathe with a guy, you're not allowed to be within 4 amos of him. If you separate yourself 4 amos from the guy, then it's okay. But to be within 4 amos, that's the problem. That's what the Gais Maimonis says.
That's the problem. It could be that's the whole point. It's not a machlokes or shining. So not Rabbi Eliezer, in the machlokes with the Brit Milah and the other shining.
Right.
Maybe just like he's talking about the 4 amos.
Right, so that's how he answers it. He says, according to Pirkei Eliezer, says it's also he's talking about within 4 amos, and he did it. We did it with a distance of 4 amos, so it's okay. That's what the Gais Maimonis answers. The Mordechai in Maseches Avodah Zarah in Remez Taf Lamed Tes, he answers differently. He says that no, there's a difference between if I was there first and then a guy came in which case I don't have to leave. But Pirkei Eliezer is saying if there's a guy who's already there, I'm not allowed to go in and take a bath with him. So the Mordechai makes the difference between whether I came first, in which case it's mutter to bathe with the guy, or whether the guy came in first and then it's asur.
It doesn't matter the 4 amos.
Right. So the Ramah in Yerdeh Simin Kufnun Gimel brings this down. They bring down this Israel halacha l'maaseh that you're not allowed to take a bath with a guy. Right? They go to a YMCA or something like that. You want to go to the swimming pool with the guy. The question is it mutter al pi halacha? Right? So the Ramah says he passes like the Mordechai. The Mordechai says if you came first, it's mutter. If the guy came first, then you're not allowed to join him. That's what the Ramah paskins. But then the Ramah says another chiddush. He says, but Alpha Pikain, I don't understand. How come nobody is makpid on this halacha? That's what the Ramah asks. So the Ramah says, Elamai, it has to be that this whole halacha that you're not allowed to bathe with a guy is only if the guy is if the minhag was to bathe naked. So that's why you're not allowed to go bathe with a guy. But he says, but nowadays that we bathe with wearing pants, so then it's mutter. So are you allowed to go to the YMCA? Everyone's wearing pants over there, right? So then you're allowed to bathe with a guy over there. You go to the swimming pool or something like that. But stam to bathe with a guy let's say in a locker room situation, like something like that, whether you're not wearing any clothes. So then, according to the Ramah, if he came first, if the guy was there first, you're not allowed to go in afterwards. That's the Ramah paskins. So the Ramah goes with the Mordechai's Mahalach to answer up the question between the Mishnah of Avodah Zarah and the Pirkei Eliezer. The Taz he disagrees with the Mordechai, and he says no, that's not the way you answer the steer between the Mishnah and the Pirkei Eliezer. He says no, really Pirkei Eliezer is not talking about Isser B'chlal. There's B'chlal Isser technically. And Pirkei Eliezer is just saying that like there's an extra Milah of Tyra not to bathe with a guy. It doesn't say it's usher to bathe with a guy. It says if you bathe with a guy, it's like you're bathing with a mitzvah. It doesn't say you're not allowed to do it, right? You're allowed to touch a mitzvah technically. It makes you tamei, but and why would you want to do that? But there's nothing wrong with it. So the Taz says really Pirkei Eliezer is not saying that. And then he says so what's the halacha l'maisa? So the Taz says halacha l'maisa is that he doesn't care whether you came first, whether you didn't come first, it doesn't matter. He only holds with the second chiluk of the Ramah. If you're wearing clothes, then if you're wearing pants, everything is mutter. If you're not wearing pants, nothing is mutter. That's what the Taz paskins.
The reason is not tumatara.
Right. It says because of erva, because of a chashash of erva. That's why he makes a chiluk between wearing pants and not wearing pants. That's what the Taz paskins. I looked at a few poskim. It seems like the Shach goes like the Ramah, that there's 2 heterim, and the Darkei Tshuva goes like the Shach and the Ramah. Yeah, there's 2 heterim. That one heter is if you came first, and the other heter is if you guys are wearing pants. So it sounds like Shala. I was musupik. What does it mean wearing pants? What's the heter of wearing pants? I have to wear. Let's say I'm wearing pants and he's not. Or he's wearing pants, I'm not. What then? Like, is it mutter or not mutter? I'm not. I didn't see what they say about that. But fine. That's an interesting piece of halacha l'maisa that comes out from this. Fine. Let's go weiter. Rabbi Omer. Rabbi says, Yitzchak mal as Yaakov. Yitzchak Avinu gave a bris milah to Yaakov. The Esau moas b'milah, but Esau despised the bris milah. Kishem shemasas b'chayra, just like Esau despised the b'chayra, the firstborn right. Shneimar vayives Esau v'sab'chayra. Esau despised the b'chayra, the firstborn right. So too, Esau also despised the milah. Right? What does it mean Esau despised the milah? So the Bais HaGadol brings three pshatim. Either it means that he did, let's call it a surgical procedure, what we call moishech ba'ar lasai, where he sort of pulled the skin around his bris milah and then like made it stick up to make it look like he still had a foreskin, even though it was batzim cut off. That's one pshat. Because he was dafka. Right, what?
He was supposed to be 8 days old.
Right, because when he was 8 days old, he wasn't off the derech here, right? So his father gave him, it seems, Pashab Shad is, his father gave him a bris, just like he gave a bris to Yaakov Avinu, right?
The first bris?
What? Mistama Esau, because he was the older. Al Pi Pshat, Esau was the oldest.
Says here, he gave to Yaakov.
1 second. It says Yitzchak gave a bris to Yaakov, and then it says Esau despised the milah. It doesn't say that Esau didn't get a bris milah. It's the Pashab Shad is that Esau got a bris milah just like Yaakov did, because they were 8 days old. They were little kids who said why wouldn't Esau get a bris milah, right? But when Esau got older, so he did this procedure called Mishaych Bar Lasai to make it look like he didn't have a bris milah. That's one shot. The second shot that the Bais HaGadol says was that because Esau was born red, so therefore his father didn't give him a bris because like he looked like he was unhealthy. Bais HaGadol brings this shot. Because he was red, he didn't want to give Esau a bris, and then when Esau was older, he was already off the derech, and he didn't let them give him a bris.
It simply contradicts what it says about Shkad.
1 second, why?
Because it says that if Yaakov would have given Dina a circumcised person, she wouldn't have left an uncircumcised person.
When Rashi says that?
When Esau was circumcised and Shkad wasn't circumcised, according to that, I don't know Rashi, I don't know who says, maybe a different person. I don't think it's Rashi, it's a different, you know what, you heard that thing here? I've never heard that. That one of the reasons he was given to Shkad because if Yaakov wouldn't have if he wouldn't have a cover on the back, then Esau would have seen her and he would have wanted her, and then she could have I think returned him a tshuva or something, and then she would have lived with a circumcised person.
You're right.
But because he didn't, he got Shkad was uncircumcised.
I've read that. I don't remember who said that. Maybe Rashi. He was afraid that Esau would take her.
I don't remember Rashi saying. You remember Rashi saying that?
I don't remember who said that, but I remember
Somebody
said that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, somebody said that. I don't remember who.
I don't see it in Rashi.
Leah was afraid that she would have to go face up.
That's a different thing.
That's a different thing. That's Ishish.
Cool, I have to look into it. Al Kapanim. So the second shot of the Bais HaGadol is that Esau never got his bris milah. He didn't get it when he was a baby because he was red, and then when he was older, he made sure that he didn't get it. The third shot, the Bais HaGadol says, and he says that this is more according to the kavanah of what the Medrash is saying over here, is that what it means is that Yaakov got the bris milah and then he continued it for generations afterwards. He gave it to his kids and his kids to his kids, etc. Esau, he may have gotten the bris milah, but that was it. He didn't give it. He didn't pass on the mitzvah to the next generation. That's what it means that he hated it. It was a separate mitzvah that Yishmael got for with B'nai Keturah. Right. They all have to do it, right? The Rambam says that. See, because the Medrash continues, it says like this: how do we know that the sons of Yaakov Avinu had a bris milah? Shine'emar, it says in the pasuk by Shechem, it says, "Ach bezeisi oisu lanu ho'anoshim." Right? Shechem told the people of his city, he said, or maybe it was his father that told the people of his city that they're only going to want to be with us if we get a bris milah, and then we can join together. Right? So that tells us that the Mikana Tolamed, from here you learn, Shebnei Yaakov Hayu Nimalin, that the sons of Yaakov had a bris milah, umalu levonehem, and they also gave a bris milah to their descendants, v'nchilu ala chok olam, and they bequeathed it to their descendants as a chok olam, as a eternal law, to have them Indian of bris milah. So we see that Yaakov continued bris milah. So the bicycle was saying, as opposed to Esau, who may have gotten it himself, but he didn't continue the mitzvah of bris milah. Fine. Ad she'amad parai v'gazar aleihem gzeros koshes, until the Jews continued the mitzvah of bris milah until Paro came and decreed upon them harsh deeds, umana mehem bris milah, and he withheld from them the inyan of bris milah. Right in Parsha Shmos, when the Jews were in Mitzrayim, so Paro made a bunch of decrees, and apparently, according to this medrash, one of the decrees was that they're not allowed to do bris milah. The Mufarshim, all the Mufarshim, the Radal and Rebelio Me'izmir and Ba'isagolo, they all bring other midrashim that seem to say that the Jews of themselves didn't do bris milah when they were in Mitzrayim. Here it says that Paro made a gzeh that they're not allowed to do it. In other places it seems to say that they themselves didn't want to do it. But the Pasha says that Paro made the gzeh. Why would they stop doing the mitzvah? The Radal brings a shtickle Torah from the Arizal. The Radal in the end of Eis Lamed Aleph brings from the Arizal that it says in the pasuk in the beginning of Parsha Shmos, Hine am b'nei Yisrael rav v'atzum mimenu. If you take the words Hine am b'nei Yisrael rav v'atzum mimenu, Reshet Tevis, you get the word hevirum. They made them transgress. Why did they make them transgress? Says the Arizal, if you take the end of the letters, Hine am b'nei Yisrael, the last letters of the last letter of all those four words, you get the word Hamilah. So the Rizal finds a remez to the fact that Paro forced them to discontinue bris milah in that pasuk of Hine am b'nei Yisrael rav v'atzum mimenu.
It's also seemingly the only thing they had. Also,
What other mitzvahs did they have? Well, they had, I don't know, Gita Nosha, they had maybe Yibum, they had other mitzvahs. Meiser, we spoke about before, Meiser. Okay, let's go weiter. Uviyam sheyatzu Yisrael miMitzrayim, on the day that Klal Yisrael went out of Mitzrayim, Nimoilu kulam migadol ve'ad koton. All of the Jews got a bris milah, from the older people to the younger people. Everyone got a bris milah. Shinema, because it says and the Radah points out, because obviously if they ate Korban Pesach, that means that everyone had a bris milah. Because if you don't have a bris milah, you're not allowed to do Korban Pesach. If your son doesn't have a bris milah, you're not allowed to do Korban Pesach. Right? So obviously they all had a bris milah, otherwise there wouldn't have been a Korban Pesach. Shinema, it says in the pasuk, Ki mulim hayu chol ha'am hayotzim. All the people that were coming out of Mitzrayim were mulim. They had a bris milah. Pasuk in Yeshua that we're going to see in a few minutes, that in the time of Yeshua in Perek Hey, when they were at Charvas Tzurim, so they had to Yeshua did a mass bris milah for all of Klal Yisrael. We're going to have to see exactly why he had to do that, but it says that all the people that went out of Mitzrayim, they had a bris milah, but afterwards they didn't have a bris milah, or so it seems. V'aloichem dam milah v'dam pesach, they would take the blood of the bris milah and the blood of the Korban Pesach, v'hayunesin al mashkef batehen, and they would put it on the lintel of their doorpost, of their door. Uchesha'avar Kadosh Baruch Hu l'ngoif es Mitzrayim, and when the Kadosh Baruch Hu passed over to give a plague to the Egyptians to kill them by makas b'choros, v'ra es dam habris v'dam ha'pesach, and he saw the blood of the bris milah and the blood of the Korban Pesach that they put on their doorposts. Nismali rachamim al Yisrael, Hashem was filled with mercy on Klal Yisrael. Shenema, as it says in the pasuk, Vo'ever alayich Vo'areich, I am going to pass over you and I'm going to see you mispeiseses bidomayich, bubbling in blood. Vo'em alach bidomayich chayi, and I'm going to say to you, through your bloods you're going to live. Vo'em alach bidomayich chayi, and I'm going to say to you, through your bloods you're going to live. It says it twice. So what's this inyan of saying it twice? Why does it say it twice? That you're gonna live. So I'm saying, b'domayich, through your bloods you're gonna live. So it's the fact that it says it twice. Through your blood you're gonna live. Through your blood you're gonna live. That comes to tell you that we're talking about two types of blood. There was the blood of the dam Korban Pesach, and the blood of the dam Brit Milah. That's what the Radal says over here. Fine. Rabbi Eliezer argues. He understands the double lashon to coming to teach us something else. Why does it say it twice? Through your blood you're going to live. If you want to tell us that it's talking about, the way Radal says it's like this, like, if you want to tell us that it's talking about two bloods, so that we lay out just from a puzzle of b'damayich, because damayich means your bloods. So why does it say twice, from your bloods you're going to live, from your bloods you're going to live? Rather, it's coming to teach us something besides what you just told us. Rather, Hashem said, B'schus dam Brit Milah, v'dam Pesach go'alti eschem mitzrayim. In the merit of the blood of Brit Milah and the blood of Korban Pesach, I redeemed you from Mitzrayim. U'v'schusam atem asidin ligoyel b'seif malchus revi'is. And in the schus of these two elements, you are destined to be redeemed at the end of the fourth kingdom, at the end of Malchus Golus Edom. You're also going to be redeemed in that schus. That's why it says twice, through your bloods you're going to live. Through your bloods you're going to live. These two bloods are going to cause Yisrael to live both by the Geula from Mitzrayim and also by the Geula in the future. Yeah? Any questions?
I'm probably wrong. The Mal, when Am Yisrael was Mal.
Yeah.
I thought it was after they had left into the Midbar.
We'll get to that in a moment.
Here it would be before they shechted the Korban, or after they shechted the Korban?
The Korban Pesach?
Yeah.
Probably before.
It would be hard to say. Then they left.
No, yeah,
They walked out
it would have to be
with
before,
the
because if it was after, when you shechted the Korban Pesach, you were puzzled from eating it. So then you can't be part of the group.
It
Yeah,
have to be at least 3 days before, 4 days before.
maybe to give them time to recover. It could be.
I think there's a.
Anyway, that's why the lamb already on the
I'm
lamb.
not so sure what.
On the 10th.
What's the day of the Brit Milah according to the?
What's what?
The day of the Brit Milah according to the Torah wasn't?
The 8th day?
No.
What do you mean?
The day that it happened. The date.
Then what happened?
The Brit Milah. The whole people. Yeah.
No, it doesn't say. It doesn't say when they got the bris milah.
I saw somewhere that it happened on Yud Nisan.
Yud Nisan? Okay, could be. I don't know offhand of a source that talks about it.
Fine.
But it makes sense. When Hashem first told them about Korban Pesach, then right away they got their bris milah.
Makes sense.
Makes sense. What? It's your birthday? Oh, I'll have to remember that. No, he's saying Yud Nisan is. By the way, I brought cakes for the Olam. What? No, it's our. I believe it's our 60th shir. So in honor of the anniversary of our 60th shir. Al Kapanim. So the future Geula is going to happen in the schus of Dam Milah and Dam Korban Pesach. Says the Radal, we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, so there is no Korban Pesach. So how can Mashiach only come b'schus the Korban Pesach if we can't do a Korban Pesach? So the Radal says, Elamai, you have to say that what it means is that in the schus that when Klal Yisrael was mekabel the mitzvah of Korban Pesach in Mitzrayim, that schus is going to last for us for Geulas Mitzrayim and for the future Geula b'mher b'yameinu. I didn't write this down, but I saw one of these Mizrachi Sfarim, like the Dati Lumi Sfarim. They bring down this pick of Eliezer, and they ask the same question as the Radal. How could it be that it's going to be in the schus of Korban Pesach if we don't have a Beis Hamikdash, we don't do Korban Pesach? And then what?
Pause before I continue.
No. And they say, Elamai, it has to be that before Mashiach comes, we have to do Korban Pesach. That's what they say. In order to justify, I know people. I heard
tell people, and then
every year on Erev Pesach. Every year on Erev Pesach, you don't hear about this sometimes you hear about this in the news. Every year Erev Pesach, people get arrested trying to bring a lamb up to the Har Bayis. Every year.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. You've seen pictures.
Yeah, people doing that.
Yeah. People are too busy to check the news Erev Pesach. But okay. Let's go back there. Rabbi Shmuel Leimer. Rabbi Shmuel says, Lo'ikiv Avram mikol asher tzivahu. Avram Avinu didn't hold himself back from everything that he was commanded to do. Uchashenolad Yitzchak, I mean, he did everything right away. The day he got the mitzvah of Brit Milah, he did it that day, like we said in the beginning of the parak. When Yitzchak was born, Ben Shmanas Yomi, he gisha Milah. When he was 8 days old, exactly 8 days old, he brought him for Brit Milah. Shenemar v'yamar Avram es Yitzchak b'noi Ben Shmanas Yomim. He was 8 days old. I think the Radal says this. The Radal says that he did it dafka in the morning because Zuzan Makdimin. We spoke about last week if Avram Avinu did Zrizim Makdimin because it says that he did it in the middle of the day, but like he did in Pashas, he did it early in the morning. Zrizim Makdimin. V'higishay lemincha al gabei mizbeach, and Avram Avinu brought Yitzchak as a mincha on top of the mizbeach. What does that mean? He brought Yitzchak as a mincha on top of the mizbeach. So you might think that this is some sort of allusion to the Akedas Yitzchak. But it doesn't make any sense because we're not talking about Akedas Yitzchak over here. We're talking about Brit Milah. What Shaychas. Akedas Yitzchak happened years afterwards. And as the Radal points out, Akedas Yitzchak, we have a whole discussion about Akedas Yitzchak, Parak Lamed Aleph. This isn't Parak Lamed Aleph. This is no Shaychas. So the Radal, and as well as the Marzu, they explain that what's happening over here is that it's based on what we said last week. Last week we spoke by Richus about this idea that a bris milah is like a korban. Right? Remember last week we said that a bris milah is like a korban? So we're saying that when Avram Avinu gave Yitzchak a bris milah, it's as if he brought him as a mincha on the mizbeach, as if he brought a korban. It doesn't mean that he brought Yitzchak as a korban, but it means that when he gave him bris milah, it's as if he brought him as a korban. V'asa simcha u'mishte, and Avram Avinu made great happiness, and he made a mishte, a meal, a party. Mikan amar chachamim, from here the chachamim tell us, chayav adam la'aseh simcha mishte b'oisa hayom shezacha lamu es benoi. A person is obligated to make a happiness and a meal on the day that he is merited to give his son a bris milah, k'Avram Avinu, just like we find by Avram Avinu. Shinamah, it says in the pasuk, Vayas Avraham mishte gadol. Avram Avinu made a big meal. B'yom higomel es Yitzchak, on the day that he weaned Yitzchak. That's the Pashas Pshat in the pasuk. B'yom higomel es Yitzchak. Pashas means on the day that he turned 2 years old and his mother stopped nursing him, he made a big party. That's Pashas Pshat in the pasuk. But Taisus in Masechah Shabbos, Daf Kuf Lamed Amud Aleph, says that higomel es Yitzchak refers to the day that Yitzchak Avinu had his bris milah. Why? Because it says, Higomel, take the word Higomel and split it in half. Hey Gimel and Mol. Hey Gimel is, Hey is 5, Gimel is 3, 5 plus 3 is 8. So B'yom 8, Mol, on the 8th day he got a bris milah. So Avram Avinu made a Mishnah Gadol on the 8th day when Yitzchak got a bris milah. That's how Taisus understands Pshat in the pasuk. If I'm not mistaken, Rabbeinu B'chaya says that he made a Suda on the 3rd day after the bris milah. A similar idea. There's an Indian, the Hasidim have a minute to make a special party the 3rd day after bris milah. But Al Kapar, the Medrash over here saying that there's a chayav adam to make a Suda, Simcha Memishta, on the day that you make a bris milah. And that's why this is the source for halacha in Yeridei Simin Reish Samachei, that the minhag in Klal Yisrael is that when you make a bris milah, you make a Suda dafka that day. It was once at a bris that the Suda wasn't on the day of the bris. Well, Pashtus, because the way they did it. No, it was on Tisha B'Av. The bris was on Tisha B'Av, and then it was Tisha B'Av very late afternoon, like right before Shkia. They did the bris, and then they had a speech, and then they davened the Ma'ariv, and then they had the Suda. That's what it was. The Hemshech, yeah, it was like one Ma'amid. Al Kapanim, this is the source of the halacha that you make a Suda when you have a bris milah. Okay. Well, I wanted to say something else about this, but I don't remember what it was. Okay, whatever. Shloisha, okay, new topic. Shloisha inuyin hein. There's three types of afflictions. Yeah. Inui hatsoim, the affliction of a fast. V'inui beis hasurim, and the affliction of being in jail. V'inui haderech, and the affliction of being on the road. Inui hatsoim minayin. How do we know there's an Indian called inui hatsoim? The affliction of a fast. Shenamar, it says in the pasuk, Inesi v'yom batsoim nafshi. I was afflicted in the fasting of my soul. So when you fast, it's a certain type of affliction. Rav Chaim Falachi points out that when we talk about this affliction of fasting, it's lav dafka fasting, but rather it refers to any type of withholding of physical pleasures. Because he brings the Haggadah Shel Pesach. We say on Leil Pesach, it says, V'nitzak el Hashem elokei aviseinu, v'yishva Hashem es koleinu, v'yares onyenu, v'esem alin v'sachatzenu. That we call that to Hashem, and Hashem saw our inui, v'yares onyenu. What's the inui? What's the affliction that we had in Mitzrayim? Says the Medrash of the Haggadah Shel Pesach, says, v'yares onyenu, zu prishas derech eretz. That is withholding from derech eretz, withholding from marital relations. So you see that that's also called an inui. Not just fasting, withholding from eating is called an inui, but also that's called an inui. And I point out that it's the same thing with all the chameshes inuyim that we say by Yom Kippur. Right? And the Torah says on Yom Kippur, "V'nisam es nafshechem." You should afflict your soul. So what does that mean, afflict your soul? So Chazal tells us it means there's 5 different things. 5 different things. You're not allowed to eat and drink, you're not allowed to marry a relation, you're not allowed to schmear, you're not allowed to bathe, you're not allowed to wear leather, all these different things. So all of that is included in Inoi Hatsoim, which is the withholding of physical pleasures. Fine. Inoi Beis Vasurim, the affliction of jail. I think I was the only one in this room who was zeicha to feel that. Shnei Amar, because it says in the pasuk, what? Well, you were also in jail?
Yeah, well, what do you mean also?
I actually was in jail in Beersheba for you did jail.
You were in jail? Oh, you visited jail?
Yeah.
Oh, visiting is different.
So I was actually inside.
Oh. Shenamar inu v'kevel raglai. He was afflicted by kevel when he was like tied up.
For 2 months, does it count?
What? You went, what would you say? Oh. How do you know that going on the road is considered an affliction? Shinema, it says in the pasuk, Ina v'derech keichi. My energy was afflicted when I was on the derech. Okay. Now, says the Medrash, Umi inay haderech loymolu b'nei Yisrael. Because of the affliction of derech, of going on the road, therefore b'nei Yisrael didn't get their bris milah when they were in the desert. Shenamar, it says in the pasuk, Ki loy moy sam baderech. Pasuk in Yeshua, again talking about that story where in Yeshua Perek Hey, where they got a bris milah again. So it says, Ki loy moy sam baderech. That they didn't have a bris milah when they were on the road. So that tells us, why didn't they have a bris milah when they were on the road? So the Medrash is saying, because when you're on the road, you have an inui, a certain affliction, stress, distress, so that's why they didn't have a bris milah. Okay. We'll get more into this in a few moments, but just Pashut Pshat. What is this inui baderech, the affliction of the road, which would be a reason why not to have a bris milah? So the Radal is an interesting discussion over here. The Radal brings a stira between 2 sources. What is the affliction of the road, which would be a reason to not have a bris milah? The first source is the Gemara Nedarim, Lamed Aleph Amid Beis. The Gemara Nedarim is talking about what happened in this week's parsha, in Parshas Shmos, that Moshe Rabbeinu didn't give a bris milah to one of his sons, and then this wild serpent came out and swallowed him up, and Sipporah cut off the kid's orla, and everything was beseder. Which I always found is one of the most interesting stories. If you don't have Torah Shabbal Peh, it's you read it and it's what in the world is happening? It's a monster came and ate him, and then she cut off her son's thing, and then she made some comment about Chasan Damim Lamulois. What in the world happened? Obviously, if you learn Chazal tells what was happening. That they were going on the road, and they stopped in a hotel, and she had given birth to this kid on the way, and they stopped at the hotel, And Moshe Rabbeinu decided, no, we're not going to give him a bris milah because we're traveling on the road, and if we give him a bris milah and then we travel, it's going to be dangerous for him, right? So therefore he didn't give him a bris milah. And the Ran says, the Ran in the Dharm explains that what happened, the taina that Hashem had on him was that this hotel that they stopped at wasn't really so far away from their destination in Mitzrayim. So like they can really give him a bris milah and then just walk a little bit further and it won't be such a big deal. Yeah. So that's why Hashem said this whole thing to try to punish him until he did the bris milah. But what do you see from this Gemara? And especially a little bit more in the Ran, what you see is that the problem of having a bris milah when you're going on the road is if you give him a bris milah and then you go on the road, it's dangerous. Yeah? Fine. The Gemara in Yevamos.
It sounds like the danger was the derech itself was a danger because there's no bris milah there.
What?
There was I understood it like a different from the two psukim in Tehillim and Yeshua.
Yeah.
Because they didn't have bris milah, they were afflicted in the derech. There was inui in the derech.
No, the Medrash is saying that there's three types of afflictions which can affect a person. That's like the opening of to this discussion. And then one is when you fast, one is when you're in jail, and one is when you're on the road. And then it's like this. Now we're talking about this affliction of being on the road. This affliction of being on the road was the reason why the Jews in Mitzrayim didn't get their bris milah. That's the pshat in the Medrash. So the question is, what's the affliction of being on the road? So the Radal is basically bringing from this sugya in the Dharm that it sounds like the affliction is if you have a bris milah and then you go traveling, it's dangerous. That's what it sounds like from the Gemara in the Dharm, right? That Moshe Rabbeinu didn't want to give his son a bris milah because he said that if I give him a bris milah now and then we go and continue traveling, it's going to be dangerous for him, right? Why? Now the Gemara in Maseches Yevamos, Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Beis through Ayin Beis Amud Aleph. The Gemara says like this: that the Jews in Mitzrayim, the Jews in the Midbar, did not have a bris milah, like we're talking about over here. It brings the same psukim in Sefer Yeshua. The Gemara says, "Ubamidbar my taima." In the Midbar, what's the reason that they didn't have a bris milah? So the Gemara has a whole discussion. It says, "Ubamidbar my taima le mahul." In the Midbar, what is the reason that they didn't have a bris? So the Gemara gives two explanations. Ibayis ema mishum chusha du'urcha. First pshat is, if you want, we can tell you that the pshat is because of chulsha d'urcha, weakness of the road. Because they're traveling so much and they're very weak, so their bodies won't be able to handle it. They're too weak to get a bris milah. Or we could tell you that the reason why they didn't have a bris milah is because the northern wind wasn't blowing when the Jews were in the Midbar, and the northern wind helps heal a bris milah, and without it, it'd be very hard to get it healed. So therefore, they didn't get a bris milah. Tisanya, because we learned in a Brisa, it says, those 40 years that the Jews were in the Midbar, the northern wind didn't blow for them. And then the Gemara says, my taima, why didn't the northern wind blow for them when they were in the Midbar? So it says another two explanations. One pshat is that they were, because Hashem made them nizufim, they were, how do you translate it? Let's say they were sort of excommunicated. Hashem rejected them. They were disgraced. Hashem rejected them, either because of the story of the Egel or the story of the Meraglim, different explanations exactly what reason is, but they were disgraced. Hashem didn't give the northern wind. The other reason is Hashem didn't have the northern wind blow because if they blew, they would blow away the Ananei covered, and then the Jews wouldn't have the Ananei covered. That's an interesting idea because the whole inyan of the Ananei covered was a miracle itself. So like if Hashem making a miracle to bring Ananei covered, so then why can't He just also make a miracle that the northern wind could blow and the Ananei covered won't go away? That just goes to tell you that Hashem doesn't like or doesn't want to bend the rules of nature too much. We're not going to also make another miracle that despite the northern wind blowing, the Ananei cover aren't going to go away. I think that's the Paschal Lamb in the Gemara. Al Kopanim, what comes out from the Gemara is, there's two explanations. Why didn't the Jews in the Midbar get a bris milah? No? What are they? Well, the two explanations: chosha de orcha, because they were weak from traveling, or because the northern wind didn't blow. Now, what does it mean they were weak from traveling? It sounds like because they're traveling through the midbar, so their bodies are very weak, and if they would have a bris milah, their bodies wouldn't be able to handle it. They wouldn't be able to recover. It would be dangerous for them. Yeah. So that's the exact opposite of what we saw from Nedarim. In Nedarim, we saw, the Radal points out, in Nedarim we saw that the problem is if you get a bris milah and then you travel, it's dangerous. Here in Yevamis, we see that if you're traveling and then you have a bris milah, it's dangerous. It's an interesting contradiction over here. So the Radal answers it like this. He says that the Gemara in Nedarim is talking about Moshe Rabbeinu, where Moshe Rabbeinu was traveling on a chamar. He put his kids and his whole family on the donkeys, says the Mufurish in the Pesukim, and then they were traveling on donkeys. So over there, the body is not weak because you're not really doing most of the traveling, you're just sitting on a donkey. So there, what's the problem? So the ikar problem is going to be that after the bris milah, if you continue traveling, so being outside and exposed to the elements is going to be bad for the healing process. That's one nakuda. But the Jews in the midbar, there was another nakuda. They weren't all riding on donkeys. People were walking. When you're walking, your body gets weaker. So therefore, there was also an added idea of, since they were weak, they weren't able to get a bris milah. So it seems like by the Jews in the midbar, they had both. By Moshe Rabbeinu's son, he only had one. Okay, let's go weiter. What time is it? Okay. Rabbi Shmuel says. Okay, so until now we're saying that the Jews in the midbar didn't do bris milah when they were in the midbar, right? Yeah, what?
To go back to the same question, though, it seems like he's a poster himself. That they already had their milah.
Who?
Israel. Korban Pesach.
We said the Jews.
He's asking, they didn't have one in the midbar.
No, we said the Jews that came out of Mitzrayim right before they left Mitzrayim, they got a bris milah. So the Jews that were leaving had a bris milah.
So now we're talking about
about the 40 years that they're in the midbar, they didn't have a bris milah.
Okay.
Well.
Still, the question is, Moses and Aaron were mal them in the midbar.
No,
we
didn't say that.
Or Matan Torah.
We didn't say that.
That's the question I'm asking. And Yeshua was mal them before they.
No, so we never said that they had a bris milah before Matan Torah. We said they had a bris milah before they left Mitzrayim.
I know, but that was my question. Well, I thought they had them.
No, we didn't say that.
It said.
That's gonna be the next line. That's gonna be the next line that the manager is gonna ask. Till now we said that the Jews in the midbar did not have a bris milah. Rabbi Shmuel says, "V'chi Yisrael shaleini moilu shamu koron shel Kadosh Baruch Hu al Har Sinai v'nasu laMesat Torah." Is it possible to say that the Jews who didn't have bris milah because they were in the midbar, they heard the voice of Hashem at Har Sinai and He gave them the Torah to people that didn't have a bris milah? Is it possible to say such a thing? Chas v'sholom. Either heaven forfend to say such a pshat. Rather, you have to say Nimorlin Hayo. Really, they did have a bris milah in the midbar. Ela shlai hayo lehem Priyah, but they didn't do Priyah. Right? Priyah. There's two steps to bris milah. There's cutting off the foreskin and then peeling back the skin so that the Torah is exposed. Right? So they did milah, but they didn't do Priyah. And the halacha is l'chol mi shemol v'loy para esem milah ki lo mol. Anyone who does bris milah but doesn't do the Priyah, it's as if he didn't do the bris milah b'chlal. Right? Therefore, ukishabar Yisrael Eretz Yisrael, when the Jews came to Eretz Yisrael, Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Yeshua, Hashem said to Yeshua, Iyata yodea she'en Yisrael nimoylen kisikanon. Don't you know that the Jews are not circumcised according to the letter of the law? Chazar u'molay sam pam shniya. Right? Go back and give them a bris milah a second time. Shneimar, it says in the pasuk, moyles b'nei Yisrael shenis. Go and circumcise the Jews a second time.
Before Matan Torah?
What?
Before Matan Torah?
No, we're talking about Yeshua. Yeshua is saying.
Yeshua. So what the Shiloh is on?
On Matan Torah. No, so we're saying. So what we're saying.
Had to have
No, so the answer is that we said before the Jews in the Midbar didn't have a bris milah, right? So now Rabbi Shmuel is coming along and arguing. He's saying, no, the Jews in the Midbar really did have a bris milah. Because how can you say they heard Matan Torah and they didn't have a bris milah? Of course they had a bris milah. Rather, they didn't do Priyah. And when we say that Yeshua did a bris milah for the people that didn't do it, it's not talking about really bris milah. It's talking about people that had a bris milah but not a Priyah.
The Matan Torah, the Am Yisrael that accepted the Torah had milah but no Priyah.
Right.
It's interesting. It says the kol mi shema lo para as milah kinu lo ma.
Yeah. We keep it, but that's not really. It's not literally kilu loimal. It's mal, but not with Priyah.
You have to say that.
Yeah. We keep it kol ha'aralois ad she'asayisam kagiva, and Yeshua took all the arlos, all the foreskins of the Jews that got their bris milah, and he put them together like a big mound. Shinema, it says in the Pasuk, "Vayomal es bnei Yisrael el give us arlos," and he circumcised the Jews in this place called Givas Ha'arlos, in the mountain of the foreskins. The Radah brings an interesting idea from the Zayis Ranan, that the Zayis Ranan says that the reason why you have to do it again is because when you do milah without Priyah, so it looks like unless you're an older person or whatever, then the atara is not exposed, and it looks like you don't have a bris milah. And that line in the Zayis Ranan, every time the Radah brings this down, and then I saw a sefer that called Ali Zayis on the Yalkut Shemaini, where he asks, the Zayis Ranan doesn't say this, but the Zayis Ranan does say it. He says it in the Yalkut Shemaini and Yeshua, not the Yalkut Shemaini Parshas Lech Lecha. It's like in a different context.
Not that this is a kasha, but I still don't fully understand.
Yeah.
The people that left Egypt were different than the people that entered Eretz Yisrael.
Right.
The people that left Egypt spent Arbaim Shana Mal Bali Priyah, and the people who grew up there were not Mal.
The people
and then Priyah became a halacha when they entered Eretz Yisrael. That's the understanding.
Let's say it like this. The people that left Egypt, everyone agrees they all had a complete bris milah. The people that left Egypt.
Yeah.
The people that were born in the Midbar, so according to the way I understand it, it's a machlokes over here. According to the first pshat, they didn't have a bris milah because of Inoy Aderech. According to Rabbi Shmuel, of course they had a bris milah, just they didn't do Priyah. And then according to these two explanations, you'll have to explain what happened in the time of Yeshua. According to the first pshat, that they didn't do bris milah b'chlal in the Midbar. So then what happened in the time of Yeshua was that they got a bris milah in the time of Yeshua. According to Rabbi Shmuel, that they had a bris milah in the Midbar, they just didn't do Priyah. So what happened by Yeshua was that they redid the bris milah so they could do Priyah. But they already had that.
Not a redoing, that's my point. And the new people.
Everyone
got totally new people.
No,
did a milah and a Priyah.
Because I'm talking about all 40 years in the Midbar. Did they do bris milah or not? That's what the two explanations are talking about.
The new people, right? The old people that came out of Egypt were already mal.
Right.
Just the new people.
We're only talking about people who were born in the Midbar. Right.
Not mal and not.
Either according to the we'll call the Tanna Kama, they weren't mal, and according to Rabbi Shmuel, they were mal, but they didn't have Priyah.
No.
What?
According to him, I'm arguing they even weren't mal. The people who received the Torah were the ones who left Egypt. 7 weeks from leaving Egypt.
You're saying, according to Rabbi Shmuel, you're saying Rabbi Shmuel is only going on those 3 months between leaving Egypt and coming to Har Sinai.
Those people
had milah b'lei Priyah, and then the rest of the people, he agrees to the Tanna Kama that they didn't have milah b'chlal. It could be. We're just to speak out a little bit better, clearer. What was Rabbi Shmuel's raya? Rabbi Shmuel's raya.
Inferring that the parents didn't respond to their kids. But this is a different generation, right? It's by Yeshua, different people.
They have a mitzvah and everything.
Yeah, so what happened there?
And they didn't do Korban Pesach all those years anyways.
Right.
Why he said the second time also?
Rabbi Shmuel said that Chas v'Shalom to say that the people that were by Har Sinai got the Torah and they didn't have a bris milah. So the question is, who are we talking about over here? If everyone who left Egypt had a bris milah, so we're just talking about the people that were born.
People that were born
the very few little kids that were born in those 3 months since they left. So like that's Rabbi Shmuel's like Chatz v'Sholom, that they heard that they got the Torah without having a bris milah. We're talking about a few little kids. They're all less than 3 months old. So like, what's the problem? So the Marzu says, there's the Radal says. Oh, so the Radal first the Radal says that that's what we're talking about, because we want to say that all of Klal Yisrael had bris milah. That's what he understands. The Marzu says slightly differently. He says that even though we're talking about just those kids, but he says that all their fathers. He wants to say that just like the halacha is that if your son doesn't have a bris milah, or your evet doesn't have a bris milah, you're not allowed to Korban Pesach. So Rabbi Shmuel understood misvara that if your son doesn't have a bris milah, it doesn't make sense to say that you would be able to be makabel the Torah. If you can't eat Korban Pesach, then like kilo kol shekein, you wouldn't be able to be makabel the Torah. So it'd have to be that everyone had a bris milah, because otherwise their fathers wouldn't be able to be makabel the Torah. Not just the little kids. We don't care about necessarily. We're not focusing on the little kids. We're focusing also on the fathers of the little kids. Yeah.
Of course, the same question will be asked. Even though it was Inuit, those are by Yom, they still were sitting in the Anan Kavod. Their clothes didn't, their shoes and their clothes were fine. They could have been mild. Of course, it's saying that they weren't, but it's very interesting. It's a nice.
Right.
You're learning Torah day and night. You should do it. It's very interesting. It's a chiddush to say they weren't mild.
Right.
They should have been mild. It was a mitzvah.
Okay, let's go weiter. So now we're going in Rabbi Shmuel, who says that really the Jews in the Midbar did have a bris milah. I understood that it's going on all 40 years, that they had a bris milah but not Priyah. Rabbi Pomerantz is saying that it could be it's only talking about till Matan Torah, and after Matan Torah nobody had a bris milah. It could be. I didn't see anyone who says such a shot. But the Medrash continues and says like this. The Jews would take the arla, the foreskin, and the blood from the foreskin, and they would bury it, they would cover it in the dirt of the desert. And when Balaam, the sorcerer, came, he saw that the desert was full of the orlas of Klal Yisrael. Omar, so Balaam said, who's going to be able to withstand, who's going to be able to fight against the zchus, the merit of the mitzvah of bris milah that the Jews have over here hidden in the dirt? Shinamar, as it says in the Pasuk, Mi mono afar Yaakov, who can count the dirt of Yaakov? So that's what Balaam saw. Yeah. It would seem that this is a continuation of the opinion that says, of Rabbi Shmuel's opinion, that says that in the Midbar they did do bris milah, but not Priyah. That's what it seems the Medrash is doing over here. And it's bringing a whole story that when Balaam saw these things in the Midbar, by the way, Targum Yonasan also says this in Parshas Balak, when Balaam saw all these arlas, he said, Mi mana afar Yaakov. That's what it seems that the Medrash is doing over here. However, like this. Taisus in Meseches Yevamos on Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Beis. Taisus asks a kasha. The Gemara says, let's say the kasha like this. The Gemara says that the Jews in the Midbar didn't do bris milah. Right? We said two reasons, either because they were weak or because the northern wind wasn't blowing. They didn't do bris milah. Says Taisus, but it says in Pikkud Eliezer that Mimona Afar Yaakov, that Balaam saw that the Midbar was full of the oilers of Klal Yisrael. So it sounds like they did do bris milah in the Midbar. Kasha. That's Taisus' kasha. Taisus in Yevamos Ayin Aleph Amud Beis. So if we're understanding Pikkud Eliezer the way I'm reading it, it seems like it's not a kasha because there's a machlokes. What I call the Tanakama understood that when they were in the Midbar they didn't do bris milah, and Rabbi Shmuel understood when they were in the Midbar they did do bris milah. And this is a continuation of Rabbi Shmuel. This story of Balaam is a continuation of Rabbi Shmuel. But Taisus asks this as a kasha. Actually, Taisus doesn't say the word kasha. Taisus says, Taisus mashma d'lei mohu klal, but Pikkud Eliezer mashma shemalu. he sort of brings it as a steer. It doesn't say kasha, but seems to say that there's a difference. But according to our Pekudel, that's not such a big question, because we already see that there's a machlokes over here. So the Gemara is going like the Tanna Kama, that there was no bris milah in the midbar, and this medrash over here about the Balaam is a continuation of Rabbi Shmuel, that they did do milah in the midbar.
Maybe Tosfos was he understood that maybe this portion of the Pekudel religion was going on like not like one of the Mandi Amar. It was the Pekudel itself, not going with what it is.
You say it's going back to everyone.
Yeah.
This line is going back. It could be. Yeah, you would have to say that Tosfos understood that this line is going according to everybody. So how do we understand it? So the most of the Rishonim in Yevamos all discuss it. Ramban, Rashba, Ritva. The Rashba says a teretz that really our medrash over here that says the story that Balaam saw all the orlos of Kal Yisrael. So that's going according to the opinion in the Gemara that the reason why they didn't do bris milah is because the northern wind didn't blow, and the reason why the northern wind didn't blow is because Kal Yisrael was rejected by Hashem. And when did that happen? After Matan Torah. So therefore everything is good, because it could be that our Pirkei D'Blazer is going at the point where they did bris milah before they got rejected, and all their orlos were around over there. And the Gemara is talking about what they did after they got rejected. They didn't do it anymore. That's how the Rashba wants to answer it. It's a shtickle teichik, because Balaam lived, like, the story with Balaam was like 40 years after Har Sinai. So it's hard to say that they buried the orlos in those, let's say, those 3 months till they were rejected, till the northern wind stopped blowing. Right? Let's say the 3 months till Matan Torah. If you learn that's because of the Egel, Rashi says because of the Egel, that's why they got rejected. Or if you learn because of the Meraglim, so let's say another year and a half. But the rest of that's like the next 39 years, they weren't doing bris milah, according to the Gemara. So then, how do you explain it? How do you explain Balaam seeing it, which was in the last year of the Midbar? So it's a shtickle shver Rashba. I wrote in my sefer on Yevamos, on Daf Ayin Aleph Amud Beis. So I brought the Ralbag and the Barbanel in Parshas Behaloischa. They write that the whole first year they stayed by Har Sinai. So the whole first year they were doing bris milah. It's still the same teichik, because Balaam is talking about 39 years later, and in a different place. By Arvos Moav, it's not talking about Har Sinai. Actually, I didn't write that ha'ara, but that's a good ha'ara also. So the Radal wants to answer.
What he could see.
What?
He could see everything.
I remember. I didn't write this down, Chaval, but somebody wants to answer that it's talking about Bnei Levi. Rashi in Chumash. Do I have a Chumash here? Yeah. Rashi in Parshas V'zeis Bracha. It says in the pasuk in the V'zeis Bracha by Shkech. Ulevi Omar Tubachu V'yach V'yish Chaser Hashem Yisrael Asat Tiveh Amem Rivo Ha'imel La'aviv V'leimor Yisiv V'esachov V'yikiv V'esmanav V'yada Ki Shamru Imresacha V'rischa Yinsaru. That Bnei Levi kept the bris of Hashem, brischa Yinsaru. So Rashi says, what does it mean, brischa Yinsaru? Bris milah. Bnei Levi kept bris milah. Sha'oisam sheneldu b'midbar shel Yisrael loy malu es b'neihem. V'hem hayu moilin umalan es b'neihem. From the people that were born in the midbar, Rashi says that all of Kal Yisrael, they didn't do bris milah. But the Bnei Levi, they dafka did do bris milah. So you could say that these orlos that Balaam saw in the desert is talking about the orlos of Bnei Levi. And the question is, how does that fill up the whole desert? Bnei Levi is not so much. Okay, I don't know if that's such a good question. This was somebody, I don't remember who says this pshat. I can't remember who says that pshat. Maybe it's some sefer. Somebody brings that Rashi to answer this question. But I said the Radal.
Also the pasuk says,
it sounds like the whole Kal Yisrael you're going to say. The Radal says a different nukuda. The Radal wants to answer that when when it says that Balaam saw the orlas covering under the dirt in the midbar, so he says that it's lav dafka that Balaam actually saw it, but rather Balaam saw some sort of vision, or through his kisa, through his witchcraft or whatever. He saw means he realized this chus of the mitzvah of Brit Milah and decided that he can't fight against it. But that doesn't have to do with actually seeing it. That's what the Radal says over here. And then I found that the Meiri in Yevamos.
Good, because it says Mechusa ba'af.
Right.
Can't count what's Mechusa.
You can't, yeah. And the Meiri in Yevamos Ayin Aleph and Beis says the same chat as the Radal. It says that Balaam didn't actually see it; he saw like a vision of it. I want to say that could be that's the pshat. It says Ukishe Balaam hakoisim ra es kol midbar. Why does it have to say Balaam the magician? Balaam the sorcerer saw it. Just say Balaam. We know who Balaam is. Balaam ben Ba'or. Why does the Medrash over here Dafka give Balaam this title? Balaam hakoisim. So I think the Medrash is trying to be miramis to this idea that he didn't actually see it. He saw like a vision or something like that. We'll get next week, Metzashim. We'll speak a little bit more about this Medrash of Balaam seeing the orlas in the dirt. We'll speak a little bit more about that, and then we'll try to finish the parak. I'll end off with a ha'ara that I had this evening. It says in Parshas Kiseitze, it says by Amalek, when Amalek went to fight Klal Yisrael, so it says Vayizanev b'cha kol nechashalim acharecha. That Vayizanev b'cha kol nechashalim acharecha, that Amalek went and attacked the laggers of Klal Yisrael, the people that were like behind the rest of the Machana. That's who Amalek went and attacked. Vayizanev b'cha. Vayizanev is like a zanav, is like a tail, right? So Rashi says, what does it mean? Vayizanev b'cha kol nechashalim acharecha. Rashi says that what they did was Makas Zonov. They smit the Jews with the smiting of a tail. What does that mean? Chesech Milais. They cut off their bris milas. V'zerek klape mala. And they took the Amalekim, cut off the bris milas of the Jews, and they threw them upwards. And the Medrash says, in the Medrash Tanchuma, it says that, and they would say, look where Hashem has got you. Look, where's Hashem going to help you now? They cut off their bris milas and they threw them up. Now, this happened, what's it called? The story of Amalek happened before Matan Torah, right? In the end of Parshas Beshalach, before Matan Torah. So, if you understood that everyone who came out of Mitzrayim already had a bris milah, so what these people who had orlas, who is it talking about? It's just talking about the kids that were born like within those like few weeks. That Amalek happened to catch those kids, cut off the bris milahs and throw them up in the air.
Yeah, but by cutting off the bris milah, is talking about the orla, or talking about the whole bris?
Rashi says, I said Rashi says mulin, that they cut off the bris milah. You're right. There is a mashmos in the Targum Yonason over there. I didn't bring it with me, but Targum Yonason says that like they cut off their guvrehen, their manlyhood. So it could be that Targum Yonason understood that they cut off like that whole aver. But it seems like from Rashi, it sounds like they cut their bris and they threw it up in the air. I'm not sure exactly. I don't understand it. Okay, we'll stop over here, and next week B'ezras Hashem, we'll go weiter.